Hi, everybody. Dr. Mike Dusa here. I was successful finally. I bait and switched you last week. Not really, but we had Michael Francois all set to come on, and we had technical difficulties. Now his son intervened, Elijah, 16 years old. And as the young people are so good at, technically speaking, he hooked us up. And here we have the very famous Michael Francois. One of the truly a member of the pantheon of all-time bodybuilding greats. We'll go over some of this, but he won a litany of contests. He had a lot of success in the pros. Started out, and Mike, I might be a little spotty from this site. You could fill this in, but he started when he was younger. He won the Muscle Mania Chicago, and then he won the Nationals in 1993, his first try. And in 1994, the Chicago Pro Championships, the Night of the Champions. The Arnold Classic he won, and he did go to the Olympia a couple of times, but he won two of the three biggest contests ever. And he's going to talk about what kind of sidetracked him a little as far as physical ailments that he suffered. But he made a great comeback, and he runs a great business now. He helps a lot of people. He runs a big bodybuilding show. You can see that Arnold Classic trophy right in back of him, and he's got the glass.
Sleep with it every night.
Hey, Mike, if you lift that, do you get a pump? Is that like?
It is heavy. It is heavy. Yeah, it's real heavy. Actually, it's downstairs in the back room, but I got it up here for this. So
that's awesome, man. That's God forbid if you ever have a fire in the house, you get all the photos, your family animals, and the Arnold trophy.
Yeah, that would be it. Yeah. Not necessarily that order. No, just kidding.
Yeah, you're right. Well, thanks for being here, Mike. So people know you as, we were talking before we go on, and one of the interesting things, I'm friends with John Defendis, and you probably know John. Mm-hmm. And John was ranked as one of the top hardest training bodybuilders ever in Flex Magazine. I think he was number 4. And his hallmark is hard training. It's something you were talking about. Have I done all that I can? You go the distance, you get everything out of the tank. And John's like that. And it seems you're like that too. In fact, I was reading an article where you said that it was more important for you to be remembered as someone who trained extremely hard as opposed to just winning shows. And we'll get into that. Hi, sure. Betty, how are you? Good to have you here. And remember, everybody, we're going to have a lot of people on here. Ask questions. Mike's here to answer them. You don't want to hear from me. You hear from me every day. But Mike, so tell us how you started. You grew up with 9 siblings.
Yeah. So way back in the beginning. So I was one of 9 kids. I grew up in Iowa, not on a farm per se, but a lot of farm work. So I, from baling hay to detasseling corn, which I'm sure a lot of people don't. So you have rows of corn, could be a mile-long row, literally, and you'd be at there probably 5:36 in the morning, trudging through cornfields in the middle of nowhere in Iowa. And you're pulling the tassels, that's the top of the corn stalk off, so they don't get cross-pollination and all this thing. So, yeah, it was a great way to make money when you're a kid. So that's one way. Baling hay, which I'm sure people are familiar with. And then walking beans, they called it, where you walk through bean fields and you pull the weeds, basically just pull the weeds or cut the weeds in the bean field. Those might be half mile to a mile long rows as well. So, and then poured concrete with my brother-in-law, Steve, and worked for him in the summer too. So there's a lot of hard work, and that's kind of it. It's just ingrained in you when you're a kid growing up anywhere, and especially at that time in Iowa. But I'm glad I did it because I think that carried over to the bodybuilding. And so I was an athlete in high school. Pretty much participated in everything from wrestling to baseball, track and field, football, basketball, and I love sports, and I lived for it back then. It was my main pastime. And then as far as the weight training, that kind of came with the athletics. There really was no off season with all the sports I was out for, but I tried to do it as much as I could just for athletic purposes. And then I got hurt playing football my senior year, and any college football scholarships were out after that. In those days, they couldn't really fix your knees like they can now. So
Mike, what position did you play in football?
I was tailback and safety.
What kind of size were you carrying? Were you muscular?
I weigh the same now. I weigh 193, 195. That's what I weighed then at about 5'9". So
that's where you're at right now.
Yeah. Yep. I might have shrunk, but I'm there in weight.
At your apex, what was your competitive body weight like when you won the Arnold?
And when I won the Arnold, it was I'm thinking 250-ish right in there, 244, 250.
Wow.
So in the off season, I right around 300.
Mike, since we're on this point, you're in the 190s now, and you're looking very streamlined and healthy. Compare how you feel now compared to carrying 300 pounds.
You know, it's one of those things where it happens. Well, the weight loss didn't happen gradually because that's when I got sick and lost it all. But you know, it's just one of those things that happens so gradually. I didn't get to 300 pounds overnight. It happens gradually, so you really don't feel it. On the backside of that, coming off, you know, I was in the hospital for 2 months, a month at a time, and wow. That's when I just about lost my life and everything else. So, because of complications from the colitis, the surgery.
Mike, we'll have you address colitis in depth when we go through the competitive, you know, when it started to affect you.
All right. So anyway, so you know, it feels good. I feel fine walking around at 190s. I do. I've always eaten clean my whole life. When I was 14, sophomore or freshman in high school, I gave up chocolate for Lent one year, being a Catholic. And I kept adding things to that list. And so the bodybuilding changeover, diet, nutrition wise, was not a big deal for me. I was already doing it. So the diet part was easy. And that's probably the hardest part for most people. You know, the training people can do, the dieting, that's 24/7. So that's hard. And so I feel good. I feel good.
What, when you hurt your knee and you were playing football, so when did you turn to bodybuilding? Like, you were building your body, obviously training, but did somebody see you and say, hey, you've got potential, or were you just kind of on your own with that?
You know what? It's interesting because I'd never been in a real gym in my life. I just had our high school little gym we had, and our school actually really pushed the weight training. I was lucky. Our athletic director, who lived across the street from me growing up, Chuck Van Heck, pushed the weight training, and we actually had a little club after school when if you weren't out for a sport, you get in there, but it was called PTA, pain, torture, and agony. And basically, looking back, it was interval training. So we'd set up at a machine, he'd blow the whistle, you'd go for however many seconds, he'd blow it again, you'd stop, move to the next thing, get ready, he'd blow the whistle. So you know, I was introduced to it way back then by that, and so that really helped. And so my weight training, the bodybuilding thing, I went to college. I was, you know, again, we probably get into this, but I was studying to be a Catholic priest, and I was in the seminary program.
What led you to that?
Well, I just, you know, I had always thought about the priesthood actually from second grade. In second grade, I had no idea what the priest did outside of say mass. And, but as I grew older, when I got hurt playing football, you know, I did a lot of praying about it. I was always, my family were big, you know, we're Catholics, and we say the rosary at night, every night, you know, growing up, things like that, especially during Lent. And my mom and dad were very, you know, not Bible beater people type thing by any means, but very religious and believing God and the faith and living right. And so it was a big part of my life. I got hurt playing football. I looked at it as kind of a sign from God. Maybe I better think more seriously about what I'm going to do. And so that's when I started studying for the priesthood. And it takes 8 years. You know, I went to undergrad for 4 years, and then I was in my third year of that. Well, actually in my 7th year of 8 years, and met a girl, fell in love, and now we're married. Obviously,
you went that far with the.
Oh, yeah, I would have been ordained in less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was right there.
Could you pick that year up now and become a priest? Does it work like that or no?
No, I'm married, so yeah, you can't.
Oh, right, okay.
You're married. Well, you can, but it's a whole nother story. But not me personally, because of the way it works out. But you could if there's some priests who are other religions and became pastors in those religions, and were able to become Catholic priests, which sounds kind of odd when I'm a guy who grew up in the church and studied 7 years and I can't be, but I get it. That's no problem. So anyway, that's, and so I ended up in college, started weightlifting in college more seriously. I didn't even know what a protein powder was, quite honestly, until I got in college. Wow. I remember way back in growing up, some kids' parents would give them Shackley.
Oh, yeah.
Vitamin powder way back.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be like, wow, what is that? And then when I got to college, you know, obviously people are using protein powder. And so I did. That's the first time I had any introduction to that kind of thing. And then the progress started coming, and kind of like you said, people noticed it. I'm one of those guys. I see the same guy. When I won the Arnold Classic, I'll see the same guy in the mirror that won the Mr. Ohio. So I just don't have I can see it in other people all day long, people I help, but as far as myself, I was kind of blind to that.
Speaking of people you help, I just read, interestingly, a kid who I used to run a collegiate show here. It was pretty big. And a kid came down from Springfield College out of the blue. He was a teenager. He won the teenage division, came in third in the open, Blair Moan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You worked with him, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Blair and I did actually our own podcast a little bit. And
yeah,
good guy. Yep.
Yeah, really good. He came a long way, and we saw when he was there, he was too young to win. I mean, he was 19, or guys,
right.
But, you could just tell he had that, a nice kid, nice family,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, he's a wholesome guy. He's a good guy.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Continue. I had to mention
that. I don't even. Yeah. So, Blair, thanks for taking us off the track. And then, so I competed, it's another story, but so I competed one time before it was between graduate school and college. Again, who knows, right? But this priest friend of mine, my mom and dad moved from Iowa to Springfield, Missouri when I was a sophomore in college. So before that, I didn't even know what bodybuilding was. Saw it on TV maybe once or twice and turned the channel. No big deal. But when I got down there and I was training in Springfield, they had little better gyms and things like that. It's a little bigger city than Dubuque, Iowa, where I was in college. And so this priest friend of mine said, hey, my brother's going to be in the show, but I can't go. Do you want my tickets? So I said, sure. So my brother, Denny, and I went to the show because this priest gave me tickets. And so I went to the show and I said, you know what, I'd like to do this next year when I graduate from college and before I go to seminary, theology. And so I did, and I won the Mr. Springfield and got fourth in the Missouri. And wow. So I don't even I count that as my first, but really I didn't still know what I was doing. So I kind of, in a reluctant way, those were my first shows, but really the first ones were the Ohio in 1990. There was a World Gym Classic, West Virginia show, then the Ohio, and those were really my first.
Mike, I told you one of my references. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
right.
is muscle memory, and it's not always complete in bodybuilders' histories because if they don't have the full lineup, you won't put the stuff. But I got your first win is 91 Musclemania Chicago. Was there a contest before that? 1991.
Yeah, that one in Missouri I was talking about, and then so that was 1987. Then 1990 was really my first after. I was done the seminary and I was with Shannon. We were married. And then 1990, we weren't quite married yet in 90, but 91. But in 1990, I won the Upper Ohio Valley show in West Virginia. And then I won the World Gym Classic, which is kind of our show now because that quit and we kind of took it over. And then Bob Lorimer had it. And then I won the Ohio that same year. And then
were you competing against? Was Dave Lieberman in there with you?
Yeah, Dave got second in the Ohio when I won. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, Dave's a friend.
Yeah, and then Bob Lorimer, Bob, probably right, Jim's son. He said, "Hey, why don't you go down to the Junior Nationals?" After I won the Ohio, I said, "It's not in my."
Yeah.
It's in New Orleans. I'm not. My mind wasn't on it. It was a week or two after the show, and so I said, "You know what? Okay." And they said, "We'll pay your way down." Da, da, da. So I said, "All right, I'll go." Went down and I just got destroyed. I didn't make the call out. Boom, done. I mean, there's like 30 or 40 guys in my weight class. I didn't get in the top 15. And a guy named Flex Wheeler was in the show. A guy named Paul DeMeo was in the show. Jimmy Mentis was in the show. I'm sure there's tons of others I don't know, but a guy that won the show, Robert Rothrock from Mississippi or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I had and so that's how tough it was that those three guys didn't beat this other guy who had never ended up, I don't think, turning pro, and these other guys end up being really good bodybuilders, especially Flex, obviously, and Paul. So, so that was my first foray, and I said, you know what, I got to get a lot better. And so that's, it was a tough lesson to learn.
But Mike, you being there, as good as those guys were, you didn't think this is not for me. You thought, I got to get better. I can do this.
Oh yeah, that's what I thought, right? And the only time I felt like giving it up really was. And I'm not one to, I don't talk like this if it's not real. There's a time where I got politicked out of something and I knew it and people around me knew it. And I thought, you know what, if this is what it's all about, I'm not sure I want to be a part of this because there's a lot of time spent to be, have that happen. And my trainer at the time said, you know what, you can give in to that. Okay, give in. I didn't think you're that type of guy to give in to that. That type of, and I said, screw it, I got to do this. So, but then I won the Musclemania and then things started rolling. And So
hey, I've got Ken D. Hi, Ken. How are you? One of our members, and he asked a couple of questions. Hey, Ken, I'm going to save those questions to later because he's got diet questions, the weight you put on for the Arnold, and some we'll get into the competition stuff in a little bit, Ken. So I won't forget your questions. But Ed Neves asks the question: if I'm not mistaken, I think Michael lost the Southern States overall to George Betancourt as a teenager. That was a very controversial decision. I was there that day as an NPC judge. This guy is Ed Neves. If that was him, that would be amazing how he bounced back from that experience. Do you remember that, or?
No comment. He nailed it. Again, nothing against Jorge or any of the other. Actually, people are telling me, hey, you're going to, and I don't normally listen to this stuff, but most people are saying, hey, looks like for sure you got your weight class and da da da. I didn't win my weight class. I got third in my weight class. And then, so they're kind of setting it up maybe for that, but I don't know. And I don't want to say anything bad about the NPC because, it's been very good to me, but.
Yeah, George was on the show. George is a nice, good guy.
Yeah. It's nothing to do with George at all.
Right. No.
And all these years later, it's like, who cares? But,
right.
At the time, it hit me, but it all ended up working out well. But it was, but those two guys are good bodybuilders too that beat me. One won the junior nationals that year, Ken Castagnoli. And then I can't remember the other guy's name, but he won the junior USA.
Wow.
So they're very, very good bodybuilders. But that day I feel like, I should.
Even still, Mike, before you broke into the winner's circle on a national level, you went into the USA championships. And that was another baptism of fire.
Yeah.
Guys who, Flex Wheeler was ahead of you, Chris Duffy, then there was you. Yeah. But then you had John Sherman, the tank, Rope Felder, John Simmons, Sinicoli. I remember a lot of these guys. I got my butt kicked as a teenager by some of them. And I got my butt kicked regularly. So it was, that was nothing, not very telling. But even still, the year after that is when you won the nationals. Did they look at you and say, hey, did they start pulling you aside and start pushing it? Did you start getting magazine covers at that point?
When I won the nationals, or what?
Well, just beforehand, like they saw you took.
I started. That's when I actually got a contract with Champion Nutrition, and before I turned pro and some things like that. So things were happening. At the time you're so caught up. I just want to get better. I just want to be the best bodybuilder I could be. Kind of goes back to that hardworking mentality thing. I didn't really care about a contract. I didn't really care about. I just wanted to make myself better, and I knew if I did that good things would happen. And that's kind of what did happen. I ended up with Champion, and they did a lot of things. Champion was great. They're not around anymore, at least as the entity they were before, with Mike Zumpano and Greg Pickett. Yes. And Steve Ward was there. He's a great guy. I always traveled with Steve. And anyway, but they're very good to me. I was their only athlete. It was a tight-knit family type organization. And the only reason I left them was because Weider offered me, 3 times the money, and I just couldn't. You never know when your career is going to end, and luckily I did.
You cannot deny math.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
And just quickly, a friend, Will Brink. I don't know if you're familiar with Will.
Yeah.
Really renowned researcher and friend. He's been on the show a few times. Came out with a really good new coffee, but we talked about that a couple of times. But he was just saying about the supplement industry. You kind of intimated what you were saying. How it was more of a family atmosphere back in the 90s, and now equity groups have acquired companies like Champion and others. So now you got these tubs of whatever in Walmart, and he goes to the Arnold and the Olympia, and it's just this disconnected feeling, just kind of like what you were saying.
Yeah, Champion, Mike Zampano was like a crazy biologist, physicist guy who came up with these phenomenal, not knockoffs. I mean, they weren't knockoffs. He was coming up with original products. And I remember Mike telling me, he said, you know what, in the 70s, I think he graduated from Berkeley with a degree in microbiology or biology, and he said, he goes, in the 70s, he worked at Venice back then at the counter or wherever, at the gym, Gold's Gym.
Gold, yeah.
And he said that we came up with creatine way back then, but we just couldn't quite figure out what it needed to make it bioavailable and not cause any stomach issues and things like that. And so it was crazy. I mean, but that's the type of mind he had, where he was thinking. He had this Metmax product that they ended up calling me Metmax Mike. It was their
Metmax Mike.
Yeah, but they had some things in it that no one else had, and it was phenomenal. And they would make special batches up for me where I'd say just triple the amount of branch chains and triple the glutamine. And I know it's not going to taste good because that's not what we're after. We're after efficacy. And so they did, and they'd send these huge bags full of stuff. It was great being with those guys.
Those are really cool times, and it's great that you experienced it. Our friend Lance Stranahan's here. Hey, Lance, Mike's a little younger than us by a couple of years, but he might remember Metabolol. I love that stuff too. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Metabolol.
Oh, yeah. It was great. That's the forerunner to that MetMax.
Yeah, MetMax.
Metabolol 1 and Metabolol 2.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people chiming in. We had George Betancourt here.
Oh.
Please say hello to Mike. I never got to speak to him after the show, and I've always wished him well.
Hey, he looked great. I mean, yeah, he was phenomenal bodybuilder.
You know, we had a little contest on here, best teenage bodybuilder ever, and I think he was on. Yeah, out of like 20 or 30 guys, and he was in the top 3. I mean, he's right there. And then Skip Robinson, who was a famous 1970s guy from the pumping iron era, he used to train with Arnold. Hey Doc, hey Mike, I met you at World's Gym in Maine. Invited you to Maine. You look great and good show, Doc. So yeah, he remembers you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Chris is a phenomenal guy.
Yeah.
We've stayed friends over all these years, and I consider him a great friend. So
what do they call him, the technician?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Was he responsible for a lot of your success or getting more out of what you were doing?
No, Chris helped me tremendously. He's a lot of people's success now in a lot of ways, but a lot of people I train are being successful because of him too, because things I learned from him. And I like the thing about Chris's approach is it's simple, and he could tell you all the technicalities of it all, but why? You know, he just tells you, and it's simple. He doesn't, you know, you get these guys, you take 3 grams of this in the middle of your training, and then 2 minutes after you train, you do this, and you stand on your head and you do this. Chris is just like, no, don't worry about it. And when you get home, get your meal in. It's 45 minutes, an hour and a half. It's not going to be the difference. And
I think people hire him because he has that knowledge. They don't really need it. They just want to know what to do.
Right.
And the people who spew out the crazy hexose monophosphate shunt and you know, it's confusing. And sometimes you're trying to make it more than it is. And I don't know. We've got a couple of others. That he was one of my favorites. Terrible that colitis robbed him of an awesome career. I always felt he would be a future Mr. Olympia. That's Robert James, and I agree, Robert. We're gonna talk about that really soon when we get into the bodybuilding stuff and what happened. Question for later: do you still have any issues with the colitis today, or is it 100% that? Okay, so you won the nationals. Did Weider get a hold of you soon? What happens when you win the nationals?
No, I won the nationals. I was still with Champion as well. Still then, I was with Champion because I had a longer contract with them. And it's kind of a neat story. So you remember Nasser, God rest his soul.
Oh yeah.
So he, and I think he was with his girlfriend, wife at the time, Bisra. So I had one. I can't remember exactly why I was out there. I was in California. I had to do a guest posing in Santa Barbara. I think it was Santa Barbara. No, Palm Springs. And so I was there doing a guest posing. Nasser, so I was hanging out with Nasser. He was just there. And because I think he may be in San Diego at the time, just drove over because we were friends. And so we're in the hotel room, and all of a sudden my phone rings. This is no cell phones. I mean, this is 1995.
Well, yeah, when you were 93 to 95.
Yeah. So the phone rings, all of a sudden, hey, Mike, you know, it's Joe Weider. I'm like, hey, Joe Weider's calling me. And I was like, wow. And he goes, I know you're with Champion Nutrition, you know, for another year or whatever, but we'd like to offer you give you a contract. And I said, okay, you know, I'm still with Champion. I want to be fair to them. So you got to let me talk to them and try to see what I can do there. And he goes, well, hurry up, you know. So, so I was like, well, first of all, how'd you know where I am? You know, I'm thinking, how'd you know where I am? How'd you call my room?
Hey, Mike, I've got to ask you though. You said when you started, you really didn't you didn't really know what bodybuilding was all about. Oh. So you weren't really reading you weren't really cultivated in your mind as far as bodybuilding went by Joe Weider when you were a kid, right?
No, I just wasn't one of those guys. Some guys got every magazine, knew all that. First of all, I didn't have the money to do it. I didn't even know it existed. It just wasn't there. I grew up in a town of, 6,000 people in Western Iowa, hour and a half away from Sioux City, Des Moines, and Omaha, each direction. So, I mean, it just was not on my radar at all. And
That's kind of like Field of Dreams country. Is that kind of what it looks like?
yeah, I mean, that's Dyersville, Iowa. Actually, I was in Dubuque that summer when they made that movie.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So
my point was, I just want to make, so when Joe called you on the phone, it wasn't necessarily as impactful as far as
it was at that point, because obviously since 1990, I had obviously become a lot more familiar with the sport and things like that. So even though it wasn't like this childhood dream to have Joe Weider call me, it was still pretty neat. I knew obviously who Joe was and that kind of thing. But it was, it was amazing. And then so that happened, and I finished my thing with Champion. Then I went with Weider, and so then that went into the end of my career.
When you go with Weider, does he map it out like what he wants you to do? I mean,
yeah, they give you basically the contract, a personal services contract, I think it was, and they map out the number of appearances they want of you and kind of what your stipulations are. And one of the things was no photo shoots with anybody other than Muscle and Fitness and Flex Magazine. Kind of a long story short, when I was in the hospital on my deathbed, I got calls from the Canadian. Is it Muscle Mag? Was it Muscle Mag?
Muscle Mag, yeah.
At the time, Robert Kinney, those guys are very nice, and they were nice to me before then. And so they called to legitimately check on me, and half the time they get my mom, because I was intubated and everything else, and she would talk to them a little bit. And then when I was back coherent, they talked to me a little bit. Unbeknownst to me, they turned it into an article and put that article in their magazine. Weider finds out, and they pull a check from me. So, wow. So I lost a month's check, and at that time, I'm like, man, this isn't good. Yeah, I just got out of the hospital and about died, and now I'm getting this letter from, I think it's Bernie Cartoon, one of his attorneys, I think it was.
Well, Mike, that's like working in healthcare, which I do. You'll get checks pulled all the time after you've done the work. So.
Yeah, and the good point about that is, though, I will say this: Joe Weider was the kind of the tough business negotiator that happens through, but he is also the kindest person in the world. When I got that check taken, my contract ended, I can't remember what month, but soon thereafter, normally. And then he paid me for another year because he knew I was sick and I needed to get back on my feet.
Wow.
He didn't have to do that at all. Didn't expect it. I thought for sure not, but all of a sudden, boom, he's sending me checks still. So
Mike, I'll say it right now. I've interviewed over 100, not guys all of your status, but guys that have been in the industry at high level. I haven't had one speak detrimentally about him, and you'll hear some crap here and there, but no, everybody's very glowing. They do say he's tough.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get to where he is in the business world and all that by not being, a tough negotiator and all that. I get it. You got to have rules and regulations. Those are the ones, and we all knew them. I didn't expect that article to come out, so I didn't do anything intentionally. But in their eyes, they don't know that, and I'm sure his attorneys handle most of that anyway. And I'm sure they have people that look at the magazines and find that stuff out. But so Joe may not even known about it, but I do know that it was him that paid me for an extra year when he didn't have to. So I was I'm grateful.
Kevin Fearer. Hi, Kevin. How are you? Mike, just wanted to say hello. Mike, you came over to Marion, Ohio in the early 90s to our gym. Steve Brisbois, I remember him.
Yeah.
And he Canadian, short guy. And guest for our show, you and Steve. Steve's brother's name is Brian Fearer, you and Steve.
Yeah, I know Brian and Kevin. Yep. I remember them both. I remember the guest posing. I was, what year was it again? Did he say? I wasn't a pro yet. I was still.
Yeah, he says early 90s, so it looks like maybe you were still gunning for the USA and the Nationals, maybe. Yeah. Kevin, if you want to punch in the year, you can.
I remember Steve, great guy, again, and for his size, man, phenomenal physique.
Really good.
He showed up for that guest posing, and I thought, man, he is not in shape, and he's very small. And then he got 5th place at the Arnold, I think it was that.
Wow.
Not that. It was that next Arnold. Yeah, it was phenomenal.
Well, I didn't know that.
They're next to everybody, yeah.
Remind me of my friend Dean Tornabene. You remember Dean?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's another smaller guy, but really like a rock. So when you're the colitis started to become an issue, have you ever experienced anything related to that in your earlier years? And is there any familial connection?
Yeah, it's my mom had not diagnosed necessarily with that exactly, but those issues. And on my dad's side, same thing. So, and then with the bodybuilding, think it's the bodybuilding diet in the sense that not the food you're eating, but just the volume and the amount of times you're eating a day. And if you have any issue like that, your colon and your intestinal system never rests. It's constantly going. And if you're one of those guys that gets up at, 4 in the morning or 3 to have a protein drink, you'll never let your internal organs or your colon and small intestine, large intestine, all that rest at all. So I really think it was that, and it's on both sides of my family. And I had never really experienced, looking back, I see in the pictures the change in my physique, though. I can see it. The upper abs were, as lean as I was, this kind of like not that look now with that whole distended stomach, but just not that sharpness in my upper abs and that I had early on in my career. So I can see that it changed my appearance.
Like, did you see it or did others also notice it?
No one, people did notice that part of my development, not as good, they thought, but it was, you just couldn't see it because of that colitis. But because, your body fat's what, 2-3% or something like that. So there's no way your abs wouldn't, be out there if there wasn't something wrong. So I did notice it. Looking back, I see the changes, and I think it probably started happening 2 years before I actually was diagnosed with it. So.
Since we're talking about Ken's question, Ken Mack, excited to talk to a legend. Me too. This is one I was really looking forward to. A question between 1990 and 95. How much did your diet change, and did you need to put on tons of weight for the Arnold?
Every year I put on about 10 pounds of muscle, stage muscle. So not just 10 pounds in the off season, but 10 pounds on stage. So,
wow.
And my diet, in all honesty, when I first started, I tried to get my calories literally at 10,000 when I was beginning, like 1990, 91. And then just to get.
Were other top guys doing that, or was that kind of your idea?
Well, it was that whole John Perillo idea, if you remember that.
John, right.
Yeah.
I just talked to John last week.
Yeah. So in the sense, I never really had any real relationship with John, but I just heard and I knew that he was pushing higher calories. And I thought, what, why not do this? So I did. And, that lasted maybe a year or two. And then I didn't feel like I had all the mass I needed, but it just kind of backed down to maybe where I could still gain, I thought, with 6,000 to 8,000 calories roughly in there in the off season. So it didn't really change in the sense that the food changed. It changed in the sense that, my caloric intake was greater at the beginning. And then I lessened it a little bit as time went on. And so that's really the only change.
Mike, do you remember what your weekly food bill was at its zenith?
Man, you know what? I don't. I just did whatever I had to do. But it probably was. I know this. I was dieting sometimes. I was eating 36 egg whites 3 times a day.
Wow.
So
in other words, 108 egg whites for the day.
And then also I was eating, I go to Kroger, our grocery store, and they would give me the big bags of chicken that aren't even for sale, like they're 10-pound or 20-pound bags or whatever it is that they take out and put on the repackage it. But so I was eating, I don't know, 4 or 5 pounds of chicken a day, and then that. And then I can't remember, I was eating rice and just all the basic stuff. That's I try to tell people, there's no miracle to any of this stuff. There's no big secret. You just got to work your tail off. Hopefully God bless you with good genetics. And even if he didn't, you can still make progress.
Yes.
And I don't buy into that. Well, I don't have the genetics. Well, you don't know what your genetics are until you max that out. I
hate the only reason I don't like genetics is, genetics exists. I don't really like discussing it because people limit themselves automatically by speaking up. I can't get this arm. I'm like, well, you might plant the seed in your head and not kind of go as hard as Francois does, and that's why you're not going to get the arm.
I totally agree with that. I think it's people in every walk, and a lot of walks of life, people limit themselves before they even get on the playing field. So how many guys were beat by Tiger Woods before they walked on the course? Because,
or how about Mike Tyson? He's giving another shot.
Yeah.
He's looking pretty shredded.
Yeah, I know.
I just read about his workout, Mike. 200 decline sit-ups. He does 50 dips, 50 push-ups, and 50 shrugs with dumbbells times 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's,
times 10 is what gets you.
Yeah, I guess that's called volume.
Yeah.
Kim B. Mac, another question on the diet. From 1990 to 95, how much did the diet change? Also, what was it like backstage warming up with Flex Wheeler and Paul? I'm sure he's talking about Dillette.
Yeah. You know, at that point, you're competitors. And so I didn't even think about this is Flex Wheeler, this is Paul Dillette, you know, this is Dorian Yates. I mean, I just did not. If you start thinking like that, it's kind of that whole thing we just talked about. I mean, they'll get in your head before you even go out there.
Yeah.
Flex usually won shows just standing there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's such a great physique. You talk about genetics. I mean, just standing there, everything's right. And so you have to beat him in the muscularity or some other way. And so, you know, but I didn't think about that. I went out thinking, my mind, I would never say this to anyone. I just wasn't the way I think, but I would think in my mind going out there, I can beat all these guys. I mean, that's just the mindset. Either if you don't have that mindset, there's really no reason being up there. I mean, why would you put in all that work and effort and to go out there thinking, well, this guy's going to beat me. Well, this guy's going to beat me. I mean, I'm sorry, but subconsciously that's going to, I think, reflect on the judges and the way you stand and what you do. I really do. So
it adds up. We got a lot of questions, so let me hit some of these.
Yep.
I got to ask this question, Mike. This is Al Diesel, about how the physiques today compared to those 90s physique. Maybe you could just explain that, what you think quickly on that, Mike.
Well, I just think they're different. You know, who knows until the judge them where they would stand against guys today. I mean, I know you get that whole thing we talked about a little bit with Dorian and other people, Ronnie, doing interviews regarding that. I mean, yeah, in my mind, I think the 90s guys were better overall. Just a different physique now, though. And they're more, I think they're big now. They're blown up, almost cartoonish looking. But they don't have that density. You look at Dorian and you know, Kevin and all those guys. I mean, just that density was there and that size too. So
the separation and detail, Mike. That you
right, yeah, that's the difference. I mean, Andres Munzer. I mean, that guy was, you know, there's nobody like that now. I mean, there's just nobody. And also, apart from on the stage, just the personalities involved now too. I think it was cool back then, you know. But yeah, I'm probably biased.
That's okay. Sorry for joining the chat late. Great to see Mike again. My faves are Dennis Newman and you, Mike. Why do old timers used to wear tights for weight training? Old timers. I still wear them.
You know what? Somebody in the gym brought that up to me today. I like them because they're in Ohio, they're comfortable year round. I mean, it just feels like almost like nothing, right? So it was and also it was easier to warm up, I think, with them on in the wintertime, and it was just comfortable. And plus, it was a great look.
Yeah, yeah, they look good.
Yeah.
Jeff Mealy. Jeff's a really good bodybuilder. Hi, Doc. Hi, Mike. What was your heaviest weight that you competed at?
I was probably, I would say 255 to 260 right in there. The Arnold, when I was getting ready, it's amazing too how good you can look on the outside, but on the inside feel terrible. And that's when I had colitis at the very end. I was getting ready for the Arnold, and it was one of my highest. I was at mid 260s right in there, and I was a week out. I mean, I felt like that would have been, but my colon was falling apart, so it didn't matter.
Hey, Mike, let's do this as we're doing. We'll get to these questions then. Let's talk about you training for the Arnold, winning the Arnold, how you felt, and going forward after that, because then, you know, certain things started to happen. Diesel, big Mike Francois fan. I absolutely believe that Mike would have dethroned Dorian and become, I thought so too, if he kept going. He had everything. But, you know, Mike was telling me before, I'll just say it, that he doesn't really linger on that. I mean, you don't linger on, you know, the wanderlust in your mind that, you know, I could have won this show and I didn't. Yeah,
no, I mean, it's not going to do me any good now. But, yeah, I mean, it's something that every once in a while you're reminded of it and you're like, yeah, you know. And for instance, that question makes me start thinking about it more. But, you know, I like to think I could have, but, you know, I just didn't have a chance. So
we've got someone of renown here, which often happens. We're Dan Solomon, the new creator of the Olympia. Mike is one of the all-time greats. Dan, I can't tell you how happy I am to have him here. I almost feel I'm in the same room with the Arnold Trophy right there. It's a big reason why I began a journey into the world of bodybuilding. So
I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Thank you.
Yeah, you know Dan, of course.
Yeah.
Great bodybuilder. Hope he's healthy and doing well. And Kevin said that earlier question, you were 2 weeks out from the Nationals, I think, when he saw you guest posing.
Okay.
Ryan Bickford, How has your relationship with your wife evolved over the course of your career and life, from pursuit of becoming a pro, being a top pro, and then transitioning to normal life? Thanks, Ryan, because I was going to ask relatively the same question.
That's the guy that might win the Nationals coming up here.
Ryan Bickford?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. How was your
are you training him, Mike?
Yes.
You are? Okay.
Yeah. So my relationship with my wife has never been good. No, just kidding. No, she's been there every step of the way, and I know how frustrating she had to be with, just the lifestyle I had to lead, and not be able to do things and go out and just do the normal things people do. And so I leaned on her heavily, and we were able to travel some with bodybuilding, things like that were good. But my relationship's always been good with her. I mean, it's one of those things where I think love overcomes all that, and I truly do. And she's done really everything for me. I mean, from setting up websites to cooking food, to always being there for me, and coming back late at night from trips and picking me up at the airport and taking me to the airport, and just constant. It started out, though, I will say, it started out where she'd go in there, be there when the plane took off, and then towards the end it was like, get out of the car. So,
well, Mike, let me ask you, because you mentioned this, when you left your training for the priesthood, if training is a proper term, how did you feel about that, and how did your parents feel about leaving school and after all this work and all of a sudden embarking on something totally different?
Yeah, it was a very hard decision to make. I mean, in the sense that I've spent 7 years of my life studying to be a priest, and I met somebody, but I could just tell right away. I mean, it was almost instantaneous for both of us. I think that we had a future together, and I mean, probably knew it within a week or two of our first time going out. So, but it was a very difficult decision to make, in the sense that meeting with the right people at the school. The Josephina is the seminary, and in talking to them and trying to find out the right path, and just praying about things like crazy, and then telling my mom and dad was very difficult. And I thought my mom would take it harder than my dad, but it turned out the other way around.
Wow.
My dad took it harder, but after being less than a year away from being ordained, he thought for sure, in his mind, that I was going to go through with it, and I had every intention up until then too. So, but you have to believe God's hands in everything, and I believe that as a Catholic priest, I was studying for Dubuque, Iowa diocese. I'd probably been in smaller towns, been to affect people's lives in a positive way, but I think through bodybuilding, I've been able to, because I've never shied away from, I don't go out and scream it from the mountaintops. I guess maybe I should, but about being a Catholic and a Christian. But hopefully by lifestyle and by things I have told people over the years, and things like that, that I have been able to touch more people's lives in a positive way, maybe than I would have been through the priesthood.
I'd say it's worked out anyhow, and you still deliver the message, just with a different vehicle. Right. Talking to Rich Gaspari, Rich, of course, and I've done some work with him, and he told a story. He was a top student at Rutgers. He was studying to be a doctor, and his parents were really enthused. His father was an old Italian. And
yeah,
he had a lot of success very young. I mean, he won the nationals at 20 or something like that. And he told his parents, "I'm moving to California to become a pro bodybuilder, leave school." And they were but it worked out really well.
Sure.
It often doesn't. So ultimately they were happy for him. What is the big statue at the back? And make a nice front double bi, if you would. I don't know about the double. Hey, Mike, can you show us the crystal?
Yeah. Well, this is neat too. This is from the Columbus Touchdown Club. It's pretty cool. This is the most muscular. Can you see that?
Can you put it like in front? There you go. Yeah, picture of Arnold. That's awesome.
So that's cool. Wish I'd have won a few more, but that's all I have. Yeah, so that's neat. I don't know how many years. I didn't even know they did that until that day. And then there's that thing. This thing is heavy. It's real heavy. I remember Arnold handed it to me at first, because you have that protan and that oil on your hands, and when he first gave it to me, I was like, whoa, it starts slipping. Anyway.
Here's a good question, Al Diesel. Mike, if you can go back in time, what things would change, and what advice would you give to up-and-coming bodybuilders?
I would have done, looking back, I would have probably done, even though I don't know if it would have helped, more like, this sounds weird, but colon cleanses and with what happened to me, I think I would have done more. I would have done more, maybe the internal cleansing stuff that you can do every once in a while. And maybe that would help. If I'd have known what I know now, obviously I would have tried to do anything to overcome that. And now you can't turn the TV on without seeing a commercial about colitis or Crohn's and the different medicines they have for it. In my time, they just didn't have those. And it was more to deal with the symptoms than it was to actually heal you, it seems. And so that's probably what biggest thing I would have changed. And you know what? Even though I'm not wired like this, you know, this again where my wife, you know, would be there for me. I didn't stop and smell the roses at all. I just didn't. I was like, what's next? After I won the Arnold, I went out to San Jose the next weekend, the San Jose Classic. So that was 4 pro shows in a row. 3 I had won, and then I had to go do that one, and it would be the same people, you know, Wheeler and just everybody. So I had to be at my best again. So I didn't stop and enjoy that night at all. I just automatically started thinking about, I got to fly to California. I got to get ready for this. I got to win that. Otherwise, to me, if I don't win that next one, the Arnold means nothing.
It's negated.
Yeah, it would be in my mind.
Mike, here's a pointed question, an interesting question with the colon cleanse, but even still looking at your diet then and comparing, let's say, flaky white fish to tendinous red meat, which is much harder to break down in the digestive. Did you have a lot of red meat versus easier to digest foods? Was that an issue?
No, I didn't really. I mean, I ate some red meat, yes, and it wouldn't be steaks. Mainly, it would be, not that it makes a difference, but it would be ground meat usually.
Right.
No, I was more of a chicken and the eggs and some red meat, but not to the point where I feel like it would have affected me in a negative way.
We've got G. High King. Thank you, Doc, for hosting this interview. I've always been a fan of 90s physique. Condition is more important than. Love your physique, Mike. And Henry, a great member, very well schooled in the tenets of bodybuilding. Michael Francois, legend. And Mark Pacheco, great bodybuilder himself, owns a gym in California. Mike, did you have good coaching influence when you began bodybuilding, or did you have to figure everything out yourself? Could you give us an idea of volume? Yeah, and talk about the weight, Mike, because you trained so hard and heavy that the volume you did to get the best results in your career.
And I had a lot of great people help me from Greg Gonzalez. I don't know if you remember Greg. He won his class to junior nationals the year that I think Bob Ciccarello won the whole thing.
I do remember the name, yes.
So I was just lucky. I was blessed in the sense that I had guys that came up to me and wanted to help me along the way. I didn't really have to pursue it, and you know, because I was probably been too shy to do it actually at the time.
Mike, do you think that happens more today, or people are kind of more to themselves now?
I think people are more to themselves now. I think it's this clique and that clique and this coach and that coach, and to me, it was just guys in the gym that wanted to help me out, you know. So everybody from, you know, Greg and Jim and Louis Simmons, Chris Aceto, you know, and then several training partners over the years. But I feel like I had it seemed like the knowledge base just went up one notch every time I got somebody new to help me. They could get me through the next level of whatever I need to get to. And but Louis Simmons training at Westside Barbell, I mean, we pushed heavyweights. I mean, we I don't know, 700 or 800 pound deadlifts and rack pulls and crazy heavy shoulder presses, 405 for presses. Wow. And what else do we do? I squatted mainly because my legs were not my weak point. I usually did that on my own, but squatted, you know, 750 for reps and things like that. So
speaking of that, Mike, did you have the Ronnie Coleman mentality? Did you see his documentary, The King?
I didn't. I heard about it. I did not see it.
Really, really good. But you know, he talked about that 800 squat, and his only regret is he didn't do 5 reps versus 2. Yeah. But you know, now, God bless him, but he's a wreck. Yeah. Were you on a path like that, or did you suffer anything from?
I never had any issues. Never have. Don't now. So I mean, I pushed it to the limit, and you know, you can't not do that at Westside Barbell. I mean, they wouldn't want you there. I mean, luckily they let me in. So. But I lifted with some of the strongest guys in the world there. I mean, Chuck Vogelpool was another guy. He has world records and at the time did at least. I'm not sure if he still does, but he would go, we'd train together. We'd probably say 20 words the whole time. And we trained 45 minutes to an hour. He would go, I go, he'd go, I go, he'd go, I go. We really, I mean, just kept pushing the weight up too, because you didn't want to be the guy to not push the weight up and to add to it. And so that's, you know, and that worked. And I had to know when to get out of there too. Like you're talking about injuries. I had to know when, you know, I got to step away from this for a couple of weeks, because I can feel, you can just feel when something's kind of, you're getting that overload where you feel like you got to back off. And then I have to come back and apologize to Louis for not being there. And then, you know, then hit it again for, you know, a month or two. And so you had to know when to do that. Maybe Ronnie just didn't have a feel for that or didn't care about that, you know, but I had a feel for it. And I never suffered, thank God, any major, you know, injuries that, you know, made me stop for a week or two even. So
that's extraordinary.
It's knocked me out of the game. So
looking at things like ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, in the literature, there's a heavy stress component. And Just Kidding asks, what kind of stress did competing Columbus place in you? How about stress in general? Do you think that an aggregate of that over time caused some problems?
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing crazy bad, but I don't even want to bring it up. But yeah, there's some very stressful things I was undergoing at the time, so I think that added to it. And so yeah, that's a key point too. I never even forgot to even mention that. But
your biggest regret in your bodybuilding career, if any?
Not being able to win the Arnold several times and not winning the Olympia. That would be it. You know, it's not going to be training hard because I did that. It's not going to be maximizing potential because I feel like I was maximizing it. I didn't get to where I feel like I could have gotten, but I feel, yeah, I really seriously think I was 70% of where I could have been. 70, 75 at the most. And then talking to Louis, that's what Louis kind of thought. And but who knows, you know.
Mike, let's do this. You won a night at the Championship Chicago Pro after the Nationals, and your first crack at the Arnold, you won it. So leading up to that, what was that like? How did it feel meeting Arnold, all that?
Oh, that was great. I mean, it was you know, one of those things where you just, again, you're like, yeah, that's Arnold, but I have things I got to do. And then after a while, it comes just another guy back there. And then all of a sudden it hits you again. That's Arnold. And I've told this little story before too, but I remember winning, and obviously I was studying to be a priest, and somebody had said that, told Arnold that. And that year, his wife at the time, Maria Shriver, was there. And I remember somebody come up and said, "Hey, Arnold's wife wants to talk to you. You're a good Catholic boy," or whatever. She's Catholic. Just talk to her. I thought, great. And I went over and I was like, "Oh yeah, it's his wife, is Maria Shriver." You know, because I didn't even think about it. I just thought Arnold's wife. Okay. And I'm like, that's right. You know, and so it's pretty cool meeting her too. And so it was a neat experience back there. My mom and dad being back there, and obviously my wife being back there, meant more to me really than me being back there. I mean,
and I think that was the 6th or 7th year they ran that, because it was 89 the first year.
Yeah, I think it was something like that. Yeah.
So it's still in its halcyon years, but you beat Flex Wheeler, Charles Claremont, beautiful physique, Andres Munzer, Lee Labrada, Aaron Baker, all the best. And you know, it's your first. Was there any acrimony from anybody because you were like a new guy, and you know?
No, I mean, I got a letter from somebody in my first show. I won't even say who it is and what it was about, but there was a little acrimony there. But that's the only time ever anything like that's ever happened. But yeah, I wish I could say, but I just can't really say. But anyway, it's a guy maybe some people would know. But yeah, that happened. But that was, you know, a blip on the nothing to me. You know, I just laughed about it, and obviously he was concerned with it or whatever. But no, I never. You know, I was just quiet, and I never had a bad relationship with anybody, to my knowledge, at all. I just didn't. It wasn't me. I just wouldn't engage in it. I did my thing, and I got away.
Terrible use of energy. That's the way I look at it.
Right.
And then you segued right next to the. Was the Olympia right after that? Because you competed in the Olympia next.
No, it was I did. Wait, yes, it was. It was 95 in Atlanta. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I feel like that's the only one I was really, you know, I came in, I thought in good shape. Looking back at the pictures, I think I did. I maybe deserved a little bit higher than I got. I got 7th place. But that's the best I ever got at the Olympia. And then my colitis started happening, and, you know, some kind of got sideways a little bit, but yeah.
Did you, forgive me, I'm not totally well versed in the nuances of what went on as far as the colitis, but did you, when you were in the hospital, so how did you end up in the hospital, and did you make a comeback after that, or were you done with bodybuilding by that point?
Well, no, I actually went, no one knew this at the time, and I didn't want to lose my contract with Weider. but before the Olympia, the previous Olympia, 97 it would have been, I was hospitalized for like 2 or 3 days, and with the colitis, and but I went through with it, and I was supposed to go on the European tour too, and I had to kind of get out of that too with Wayne D'Amelia, and that wasn't easy, and but because I didn't really want to tell anybody what it really was.
Was there a fine involved with that?
No, I never got fined. It just it was I said it was a health issue, and strangely enough, and has nothing to do with the colitis, but I had a toenail that was ingrown, and they had to remove it. And so I just said, I don't want to go trouncing around Europe with, with this and infection chances and blah, blah, blah. So that wasn't a false, I mean, that was actually true. But on top of that, the whole, being hospitalized shortly before that, I just wasn't in any condition to go.
So you were in the hospital 2 times.
Yeah. So I was 3 times. Well, I was in the hospital. When I got back from Chicago, they put me on medicines. The doctor said, hey, this medicine has kind of cleared it up. It was mainly prednisone, those types of things. Great for bodybuilder to take. But so then I got back, did that. The doctor, they scoped me again. So the Olympia was, when's an Olympia? I don't even know. October, November at that time.
This year it's December, but yeah.
Okay, so anyway, so then going into December, they're like, hey, I continued to train, but he said, you can do whatever you got to do to get ready for the Arnold Classic in that March. I said, great. Because if I didn't know you had it, he said, I wouldn't be able to tell from what I scoped.
Wow.
Great. Problem kind of solved. And then it came back full force when I was getting ready for the Arnold, and then it just wouldn't go away. No medicine, no anything would do anything. And that's when I ended up in the hospital. I think it was a week before the Arnold, and then just sat there and trying to make up my mind, praying about it, talking to people, if I should have my colon removed or just try to save it. And I remember the doctor coming in, he said, hey, do you want to pray about it? And we did. And right after that, I said, I got to have it taken out. He goes, that's a good choice. And then when they did take it out, I saw pictures of it, actually. The doctor, it just fell apart in his hands. Like, wow. Paper, he said, wet paper. So I'm glad it was a good decision.
Mike, was your life ever imperiled?
Yeah. I mean, I had probably a 10% chance of living at one point.
Wow.
I was intubated. I mean, there's several things I had. I couldn't even go through pneumonia, and I'll tell you this. So I had pneumonia and something called DIC, which is disseminated intravascular coagulation. So your blood's clotting everywhere, and then it runs out of clotting factor, and then it won't clot, and you just bleed. And so that was going on. So one day, again, here's my wife. She sleeps overnight in the room when I wasn't in intensive care. And then when I was, she slept in the waiting room on the floor. And she's a financial planner, so she would get up the next morning at 5 or 6, come in and see me, go to work, go home, go to work. And then my mom and dad were in town, and my dad would come in the morning to stay with me until mid-afternoon. Then my mom would come, and then Shannon would come back again overnight. So they were just doing that. And so one morning I'm in there with my dad, and I started feeling kind of like I hadn't literally thrown up. I hate to say graphic, but I hadn't thrown up since I was like 4th grade. Wow. And all of a sudden I started feeling this, and I said, I'm going to throw up. And then boom, it was all blood.
Wow.
And my dad, he's just such a calm, my dad's just Mr. Calm, just doesn't get shook up about anything. And he kind of looks at me and he goes, well, get that cleaned up. And then I threw up again. He goes, well, we probably should get the nurse in here. That calmness, and I love my dad. Chokes me up. And my mom.
Are your parents still with us, Mike?
God, yeah. My mom's 90 and my 89. My dad's 85. So wow. Doing well. But anyway, so I'm in the hospital. I do that. He gets the doctor, and then all of a sudden they get the doctor in there, my doctor, and this is way back. He had a cell phone, believe it or not, back then, and so he's trying to call these doctors in. I'm like, oh boy, this isn't good. And then they had to take me down to the lab, GI lab, and that's when they're trying to get IVs in me, and I'm still coherent. I'm there. And he's talking to me, and Shannon actually at that time too was just coming in with a buddy of mine who's another physician that worked on me, Dr. Serrano, Eric Serrano. I don't know if you know Eric, but they came and they saw a bunch of people trying to find me because they knew what had happened. And Shannon had come back. My dad had called her once she got home. She got that phone call. You better get back here. Mike's serious condition. And so they came back, saw somebody wheeled down the hall, and they had like 4 doctors working on them, and then they had a bunch of nurses, and then she gets down there, and that's me. And so that's when they took me into the lab. I heard the doctor say, you know, we're losing him. I don't want to lose him. They're trying to get the IVs in me, but all the blood's gone, so they can't. And my heart rate is literally, I think it was like 180 or 200 beats per minute. That little bit.
Did your veins regress into the muscle?
Oh yeah, they were just gone. I mean, all the blood was gone, and so they, you know, my heart's trying to get all the blood. What little blood it does have is trying to pump it around, so it's pumping fast. And I remember just saying to the doctor, I remember like yesterday, I said, they said, he goes, we got to intubate him. And I said, are you going to put me to sleep before you intubate me? And then he said, yeah. And then I'm out for 2 weeks before I remember anything else. And
2 weeks.
Foggy. Yeah. And so I was intubated. They're getting ready to do a, what do you call it? Trach.
Oh, tracheotomy.
Yeah. Tracheotomy. And then because you can develop different things if you're intubated, germs and things like that. So but they didn't have to, because I started getting better about then. So I was in the hospital then about, actually, you know what? All that was presupposed by me getting my colon out. Things didn't really go haywire then. That was a second time in, actually, when I had a takedown surgery to hook your small intestine back up, the large intestine's gone. And that's when they ran into all the complications and stuff. So it was just a mess. And so, you know, and then it just took a while to get back to any kind of normalcy. And my weight went literally from 260 getting ready for the Arnold the first time, 260, 270 actually, went down to 220. And
Is that by the time you got out of the hospital? Is that
the first time, yeah. And then the second time, I got my weight back up to 230 when I had a colostomy or ileostomy bag for 11 weeks.
Wow.
So I came out of that. I went in weighing 230, came out weighing 170. That's when all that stuff that happened.
Wow.
I lost all that. And so it just, you know, it was rough, you know, and then getting back to, and I probably got out of the hospital a little too early because we were pushing it just to get out of there. And it still wasn't good for a few days after that. But, you know, just being home alone helped, and our home helped. And, you know, so that's kind of the gist of it all. And then, you know, I just never had the desire to try to bodybuild again after that.
Well, going forth from that point, it was more a matter of getting your health back as far as.
Yeah, absolutely. And trying to figure, you know, and then my wife again, you know, she's like, you got to figure out what you want to do. You know, what do you want to do with your life now? And
well, going forward, before we go into that, just a couple of people mentioned Carlo Filippone. You know, Carl, he had to log on just to see you.
Yeah.
And Ken has another question. Will classic physique become divisions now? Will classic physique become more popular than open class, in your opinion? And do you follow classic physique at all?
I don't follow it much. I'm lucky if I follow bodybuilding at all, quite honestly. I mean, I train people and I'll get them ready. I know, you know, that kind of thing. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know. Classic physique. I think physique probably will be more, as far as the competitors go, the numbers I think will be greater in the physique than they were in the classic physique. As far as it taking it over, in a way, I could see it. Bodybuilding, I mean, they both are difficult, right? Those are probably the two toughest categories, because you can't get ready for that in 6 months. I mean, you have a lot of muscle you have to grow and things like that. So it takes longer. And I think that's why you have less competitors in those events than you would, you know, physique. Not that they don't work hard, not saying any of that, bikini and things like that, just because you can develop what you need to develop in a shorter period of time. So Are you stick with classic physique and bodybuilding, you know, the number of years it really takes to build that kind of physique, that's probably where, you know, people get, you know, discouraged by it.
Some good words. Mike, I need to let you know that I have profound respect for you. You were my favorite bodybuilder while I was coming up the ranks. Not as much for your physique, which was great, but religious beliefs and family values. I remember post-nationals when you went to church, the photographer was pissed, but you dismissed it and held true to your faith. That resonated with me. Just wanted to let you know. Carlo won his class in the nationals. I don't remember which year.
Awesome. Yeah, though I really appreciate that. Means, honestly, that means more to me than anything. I mean, that's like we were talking about earlier. I think I was hopefully able to get that message out, even if it's just subconsciously to people. It's important to me. I mean, I didn't get on that Arnold stage by me doing it. I got by God's help. I really believe that, and help a lot of people. But you know, and who says God didn't put those people in my life too. So so that means a lot. Thank you.
I got to give Carlo props. He won the Nationals in 2007. He got a big food prep company here on the East Coast now.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, he does really well. And Blue Cool has a good question for you. How do you maintain your great metabolism? You are still so lean. Do you still eat very clean?
You know, I think I said that earlier. When I was in, I think 14 years old, I gave up, again, the religious thing, but I gave up chocolate for Lent, and I just continued with that, and I added things to that list. And so when I started dieting for bodybuilding, it wasn't a big deal to me at all. The food was just kind of normal. Just the amounts would be different. Not that I was never hungry, because I was. But you know, that's and then so now that's the way I eat. I would rather have a rice cake with almond butter on it than I would a piece of cheesecake. I mean, that's weird, I guess, but that's me, and that's how I've always been. And so that's how I try to stay in shape. We obviously work out a little bit too, but yeah, that.
Joe Toth from Ohio, great, really shred. He's won Dave Lieberman's show a couple times.
Oh yeah, no.
And he says he was there when you won the Mr. Ohio and the Arnold Classic. I think you already answered this. Bobby Kennedy wants to know, did you spend any time training at West Side Barbell with Louis Simmons? Yes, and woe be gone the day if you missed some time there.
Yeah. No, I spent a lot of time there, and Louis was very good to me.
Mike, tell us about the show you run every year.
So we have the Mike Francois Classic. This is, I think it's our, so we started in we started the year before I quit. So 1997. So how many years is that?
23, 24?
23, 24 years. Yeah. So wow. Your math's better than mine. So we've been doing it that long. Hard to believe. But we usually try to hold it in Westerville. This year it's going to be, who knows, because of the COVID thing and if they're allowing us in high school. So we're in the process of choosing our venue now, which are more limited than they would normally be. So, but it's the second weekend of May each year. So May 8th this coming year. We've got a lot of great winners. You know, we have everything. I tell people, don't get scared away by the quality competitor, you know, because we have novice divisions, all that. And who says you couldn't beat those people? If I'd had that mindset from the beginning, I would have never stepped on stage. I mean, when I won the Ohio, Lieberman was in it. He had been competing since he was in diapers. So, so it's one of those things where, you know, don't let that worry you. It's how you look. It's not how anybody else looks.
Mike, has the show grown? Is it a national qualifier?
It's a national qualifier. Yeah, it has grown a lot. It's kind of the reason we took it over way back when, because it was kind of dying out a little bit, because the person running it had other ventures and, you know, bigger things to do. So we took it over and we've tried to grow it each year. So it's gone from, well, way back when bodybuilding was the only thing, right? So yeah, 60, 80 competitors, all the way up to, we've had up to 240 or so at our height, 250. So, and it fluctuates, you know, it's year to year. I think this year is going to be a big year because I think people are just wanting to get out there and compete and get this stuff behind us that's going on. So I'm looking forward to a big show this year. And my website is mikefrancois.com. People can get on there when we get closer, and we'll have all the information.
I'll put that in right now. Harton, it's time to think about what you're doing going forward. So what'd you end up doing, and what are you doing now?
Well, I thought about a lot of things. You know, I actually thought about law school for a little bit because my degree in philosophy, and that would benefit me in that regard, getting in. And you know, I thought about everything. That takes so long. I need to make money sooner. So I started training people, and we started. Obviously, we had our show. I
just want to mention you're shifting to the side a little. Can you move to your right? There you
go. So that's how I got started back into the training, and so it started, you know, with 1 or 2 clients, and now it's built up to where I have a lot of online clients, which I do that, and people in the gym and things, and you know, I have some great clients too. I mean, it's one of those things where I think you know, a lot of people have 1 or 2 that kind of spoil. Man, I really can honestly say that I enjoy every single one of them. They all have different goals. I have everything from people who just want to lose weight because they have a wedding coming up, to people who want to compete at the national level like Ryan, and you know, everything in between. A lot of police officers and things like that, highway patrol, and which I really respect those guys for what they're doing. But I have a lot of great clients.
Joe Toth says your show is actually one of the best shows in Ohio. Kevin says it's great seeing you again. You still look awesome. It was a pleasure having you as a guest on the show. guest posing, getting to know you. Thank you kindly. And he's still pumping iron. And Jeff, he had to go. So fascinating to hear about your life, Mike. And you're such an amazing bodybuilder and legend. Massive respect to you. And great show, Doc. Thank you. And we do have a technical question here, Robert Thompson. Do you advise compound lift, squat, deadlift, bench press for strength training for seniors, or eschew them a la Doug Brignoli?
No, I think they're good to do all the time. I think you just have to, you might have to modify them, right? I mean, you might not be able to do some full range of motion. You might have to do some, box squats, things like that if you're worried about getting too low. Bench press is the only thing with the barbell that I'm leery of. It's the only thing I've really ever seen anybody get hurt doing, ripping a pec. And it doesn't necessarily have to be crazy heavy weights, and these could be big dudes too. So that's the only one I'm very, and shoulder wise and things, I just don't like that one. I'd rather go with a machine or dumbbells when it comes to bench press. But all the other things I think can be done by anybody, but they might have to be modified, to fit your physique and what your goals are.
Mike, your age range as far as your clientele, from what to what?
From kids that are, I've had 12, 13-year-old kids playing youth sports or just want to get in shape, be motivated, feel better about themselves, up to 70, 72 years old.
So now you have one son, or do you have more
two? Bo and Elijah. Yeah.
No, do they train?
No, they don't. They just have no desire to do it.
What if one of them said, "Dad, I want to be a competitor"?
I'd say find another walk of life. So no, no, I would just, I would encourage it because, who knows where they're going to take it, but just for them getting in the gym. And I think the gym is just a good place to be too. I mean, there's a lot of positive people in there, and, people are pushing themselves, and they don't have to be there. They want to be there, and they're trying to better themselves no matter what they do in life. So, but as far as competitive bodybuilding, I mean, if he really wanted to do it, his heart's into it, I would support him in it, but it's not something I'm guiding him towards or pushing him at all.
You don't allow cell phones in the gym, do you?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I just don't say much. They know my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But some of those guys, I mean, they just feel like they got to be there and some run these businesses where I think they have to, but man, you should be able to find 45 minutes. You should just put that thing away. And I have some that just refuse to bring it in. They're just like not going to do it. And I have other ones that are a little attached to it. But
like your best body part was your back?
Back and legs, probably those two. I think the back was actually one of my weaker things and made it a strength through the help of Louie and some people like that.
Question. Mike is 55 now, Blue Cools. He does have 2 kids. I don't think he has any grandkids though.
No, I don't.
This personal training business affected with COVID at all?
It actually increased. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, it increased. I think a couple of reasons I think are people are working at home now. So they're online, they're on Zoom or whatever doing their work, or they're working out of the office at home. So they can get to the gym at 8 or 9 in the morning, as opposed to, after work. And I'm not there late in the afternoon or evening. So I think it's increased it in that way. And plus, I think people are just so darn tired of being cooped up. They want to get out, and they've never really either done it or done it to the level where I try to push them. And some people have thought about competing, because of they have more time to eat right and do things at home than they did at their office in downtown Columbus or wherever. So Mike, it's actually increased mine a little bit. You
mentioned your online business is rather robust. Are there challenges learning how to make that work?
Yeah, there are. It's the honor system, right? You have to take for granted that they're doing the workouts at the level. But the way I do it, I can keep track if they're, and why not be honest with me? I mean, why would you be dishonest with somebody you're paying to help you? So I can see, basically kind of look over their shoulder in a virtual way, and see if they're doing everything. If they punch it in right, I'll see if they did the same number of reps that I said they should do, and the exercises, and if they ate the foods at the amounts that I said to eat it, and things like that. So it's very interactive that way.
Here's a quote, and we're running out of time because I did tell Mike it'd be an hour, but we're a little over, Mike.
That's all right.
Al Diesel says, Mike, Chris Aceto says you're one of the strongest bodybuilders he's ever worked with. And I've read that as well. And Defendus also intones that. He always mentions your work ethic in the gym as second to none. Can you talk about your relationship with Chris and him as one of the top gurus? I know you mentioned a little bit there.
Yeah, I mean, just quite bluntly, Chris and I just hit it off from the very beginning, you know, and my wife too, and just a down to earth guy. I mean, I don't know what to say. He's just, you know, he's so intelligent. The most intelligent people I run into can explain something in the simplest way.
Yes.
And they can talk about it from 5 different angles and make it make sense in every way. And if you can't understand one of those, they'll make it understandable. And there's a lot of people out there who think they have that knowledge, but they can't make anything understandable, it seems. But Chris just has that knack for that, and he's just going to be straight up with you too. I mean, it's not one of those things where he's going to tell you something if it's not true. And bottom line is, as far as his work goes, he gets it done, and he does it in the way that you can understand it. And I have no reason to you know, to say that other than that I worked with him all those years, and he just phenomenal at what he does. And so that's, I mean, thankfully I've been able to work with Louis Simmons, Chris Aceto, and some people like that I am able to impart that knowledge on my clients as well.
Hey, did Weeder ever have you in a posing session? He was great at helping people pose.
He didn't ever help me. It was beyond hope, he said. No.
Are you kidding?
No, just kidding. Maybe he said that, I didn't hear it.
Did you ever compete against Gary Stridham?
No, never.
Yeah, I think it was before us, you know.
Before, yeah.
Still really good shape. Given one wish for anything, what would you wish for, past, present, or future?
My family and I all get to heaven.
Good.
That's ultimately what I want. So
good one.
I'm trying to work for that.
Mike, so you still train? Are you limited in training at all?
I can do whatever I want, but you know what? I go down. I have a gym in my basement. I do. So here's what I do, just real quick. So I use dumbbells. I do some dumbbell chest stuff. This takes me 10 minutes. So dumbbell chest, it probably looks like it, but dumbbell chest press, some bent over rows, some shoulder presses, some shrugs, and then I do some body weight squats. And one day, then I go cardio the next day for 10 minutes on the treadmill. The next day I do this stupid thing that I have 3 dice, and on the other side of the dice they have exercises, wall sits, all that kind of stuff, that kind of body weight stuff. So I throw 3 of those, and I do that through 3 times. So those 9 exercises, whatever. And then then the next day I do cardio again. And then the last day of the week I do, I have a weight machine in the basement, a universal. So I do that for about 10 minutes. So it's cardio every other day, and then some type of weight training every other day. But literally, and I'm not bragging about this, just what it is. It's 10 minutes, and I'm done. So
you feel good. You're getting an effect.
I feel good. My body fat's low. You know, and then I do a little bit of running at a local junior high. I go over there a little bit, but so those are the only things I do. But,
hey man, all you got to do is look at that Arnold Classic trophy. A couple of people are still wanting you to throw a bicep. Would you do that, or did you?
I'll give them this one. Look at this bicep. This is crazy. Watch this little ball that comes up. Where is it?
There you go. Look at that.
I don't know what happened. I didn't tear it. It doesn't look like the other one though. So
it looks like it's carved out of stone. It really does. Did you say you tore it?
No, I didn't. I don't know why it looks like that. It looks like a little. I don't know what happened. I swear.
Well, sometimes a tear makes it look, more freaky.
Yeah, I always had a peak on my bicep, but I didn't. I don't know what happened with that thing. But luckily, it's under my shirt all the time. That's the first time I've ever done anything. I don't even like to do that, but
No, well, we appreciate it. You don't seem like the type of guy. Yeah. But I've had, Tony Pearson. I've had these other guys.
Oh, yeah. I saw a picture of him recently. He looks phenomenal.
He just won the over 60 Mr. Universe in Vegas yesterday. I mean, he's still, almost like he was in '78 when he won the America.
Yeah, right.
And thank you, Ken. You have always great questions. So, Mike, going forward, just keep training people. You got any different plans for business or anything?
No, just try to really get my online thing's going actually well, but I want to try to build that up so that when the time comes, I can kind of transition from going to the gym and train people every day into just online for a little while, a few years or something. Even who knows how long I can do that, but that would be kind of the future plan. And just to make our show better and better each year, which my wife and I strive to do. This year's just been a difficult year in that regard to make it better. We just want to get it get it in, and so people have a chance to compete in it. And then hopefully the next year everything will be kind of back to real, and we'll go from there.
Mike, would you agree that running a bodybuilding show, especially a successful big one like yours, is a colossal amount of work?
Oh, my wife puts in, I mean, it's just amazing the amount of work she puts in on it. Everything from, and she's not a delegator, she's a doer. So, and she's a perfectionist. And so it drives me crazy, but in the end, we're blessed to.
Well, you guys had serendipity. That's how you met and moved forward.
Yep,
right. I think that's how you were explaining it earlier. So it just kind of clicked in a
the yin and the yang of it all. So what was it? So yeah, the amount of work that she puts in on it, everything from making the numbers that people wear, to the program, to getting everything on the computer as far as our graphics and things like that we show at the show, the entry forms, the emails that you get. I mean, just finding the venue, all that. I mean, just a tremendous amount of work. And people, I think, just think you kind of roll the ball out there and let's go have a show. It's not if you're going to be successful and have any longevity.
Well, to set it up so that person looks good under an unforgiving light, with no clothes, and hopefully people clap. There's a lot of setup for that to happen. It's not, back in the old, Mike Katz, Arnold Schwarzenegger days, they would put a light on a basketball hoop. You probably heard that, and that, that won't flow. But I really want to thank you, Mike. You're a good guy. I'm happy. I like to say this to people who I feel merit this. I'm happy that you exist. You're very enlightened. You're a nice guy. You come across as sincere and authentic. And you're one of those people who makes America, everybody wants to say America is the best. You don't always run into too many people making it that way. But here you are, and you're still, like we said earlier, you did it through bodybuilding, and now you're still helping others, but not as a priest, not as a competitive bodybuilder, just a different vehicle, but you're still making that delivery. And I think it seems like you get, immense satisfaction out of that. That gives you peace.
Yeah, it does. And that really means more to me. And I say this, I know it sounds like people are, it does mean more to me than anything else, because in the end, that's, in my world, that's all that matters. And, and everybody comes from a different place, but that's for me, and I strive every day, and I'm a sinner like everybody else. Right. But I try to do the right things. And then if I screw up, I try to do it right the next day. So.
Plus, listen, if you ever want to market that 10-minute workout, I'm pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah, okay. All right.
we include dice. It's something.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I really want to thank you, and thanks for putting up with my technical lapse, and I hopefully have you back sometime. And again, it was great talking to you. We had a ton of questions. I don't even think I got to all of them, but I want to thanks again. This will be on your timeline. It'll be on YouTube, and you can even disseminate it and spread it out in whatever you want to do.
No, thank you, and I appreciate you having me on. And also, I couldn't say it for every person, but I really do appreciate the questions and people taking the time to send their questions in, and that they're at all interested in my background and what I've done and all that. That's cool. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You've lived an impactful life, Mike, and it goes beyond your sphere of influence, I think. So I want to thank you again, and I want to thank everybody. And I've got some other guys coming up, but I've got to go because I left the dogs alone in the house all day. So I don't know what I'm going to be getting into right now. But thanks again, Mike. I'll shoot you a message later on, okay?
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.